Hello, you're watching Let's Talk Race and Modern, where we make truth a very big deal. It's your host, Harrison Paul. And today we're going to talk about Vivek dropping out of the race. So I obviously follow American politics a lot, as you may guess. I follow American culture a lot, as you may guess. And I was quite shocked this morning to wake up to find out that Vivek Ramaswamy, I think he's an Indian man or Asian of some sort, dropped out of the race for presidency. Of course, I'm hoping that Dr. Cornel West wins it. We're praying for that kind of an outcome, but this seems to have been a strategic move by the Republicans. So I'm just going to start by playing the video very quickly, and what I'm going to talk about today is how this is a very good demonstration of white supremacy. Stay tuned.
But I was a friend of his, and we got along, and he was saying he's a great president. I kept saying, why is he running? He keeps calling me a great president. But he's a fantastic guy, a very smart guy. He's got some tremendous ideas, and he's young, and he's got some young ideas, too, and that's a good thing. So he has a big, beautiful, bright future ahead. Vivek Ramaswamy. Come on up, Vivek. Let's do this, guys. It's good to see you. It's good to be back to New Hampshire. We miss you guys. We're going to make this happen, and you guys know this well. You know this man. You know why we're here. Patriots across the state. We are in the middle of a war in this country. That's what this is. It's not a war between black and white. It's not between Democrat and Republican, even in a deeper sense. It's between the permanent state and the everyday citizen, between those of us who love the United States of America and a fringe minority who hates this country and what we stand for. And right now we need a commander-in-chief who will lead us to victory in this war.
Yeah, so that's what it is. There's so many ways, right? So many ways that today I was quite overwhelmed with how I was going to bring this all together. But white privilege for me is written all over this. I'm thinking of white privilege because I'm going to touch on certain points, but those are points that they're way too ambiguous, so I'm not going to push down that rally because, you know what I mean, anybody could make an argument on either side. But I feel like everyone was betting on this guy. But I feel personally, moments like this is where he's reminded that the bigots of America or the bigots of any country, now remember Ireland, I always show you how I can tie this to Irish culture. We are so far from, the Irish natives, let's say the Irish who are stuck in their ways, not the young ones who are liberal, but the ones in their 40s, 50s, 60s. They may greet a black person at the shop or an Indian person at the shop, but how many of them will actually lay their vote to say, you are going to run my country? There is more of a trust for someone that they can identify with, regardless if that person has an Irish passport or not. There is obviously, this is why I talk about, I'm going to move on to this regarding Irish white privilege. Imagery did so much. The destruction of the perception of Africans, and will even put any other person of color. This is where we get to see the benefits of white privilege, because that alone has given a mountain to climb for a person of color. And I don't really like that term because I don't see myself as a person of color. I'm a black person. Maybe the rest of them are people of color, but I'm a Negro. Anyway, because I know that they do this thing where they cram us all in as if we all have the same story and the same background, but it's not the case. Africa has given and been taken from more than any of those other people of color, with no offense to any of them, but I just I want that to be differentiated, because I do feel when it comes to like, the other communities, LGBT or people of color, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, it's time to give you, and there's this sense of a laziness and not investing into actually like, the real history behind what they've stolen from Black people and from Africa. And I think they do that purposefully and willfully. But let me get back to Vivek here. It's quite interesting because I was talking about how, in these moments, you're reminded of how many people are willing to cast their vote. And like they said, he was young, on fire. A lot of American people were saying that. A lot of, commentators were saying he's young, he's on fire. And I was shocked to hear him this morning pull out. So that's the first point. I think that obviously they had a poll, and on the poll, he realized that, look, I'm not as popular as I think I am. And I really think that's down to race. Personally, for me, people may not want to believe that. People may also argue that Trump has been here before. He's more well-known. People are going to go for someone they trust more. But then that goes to my next argument, which is the fact that Trump is now, look, Michelle Obama said this, so I'm going to quote her as well. I don't know if I'm going to put her up on the screen. I may.
I mean, the bars are different for people in life. That I've learned. This is the thing about being an other. Mm-hmm. You learn how to be excellent all the time because you can't be less than. Mm-hmm. Other people can. Other people can be indicted a bunch of times and still run for office. Mm-hmm. Black man can't. You just learn to be good. And in the end, you benefit from that extra resilience. You could be mad about it, but it also makes you more equipped, right? But it's still not fair.
But basically, what she goes on to say is, white privilege is right there demonstrating itself. Like, a man that's made so many mistakes, as much as mistakes as he's made, how does he still find himself? And in fact, in many ways, I like to analyze Trump's journey and Trump's characteristics and Trump's character, or not even his character, but more so his journey. It's astounding how much someone can be so reckless. I guess this is where we think of the Hitlers and all those sort of people. Someone can be so reckless in so many ways. And then you have Vivek, a guy who is, you can tell he's trying to color in between the lines at all times. There's so much recklessness, and there's a graveyard of horrendous, character blotches in his character that is clear. But that white privilege takes him over the line. And I'm going to give you examples why that proves it's white privilege. But, what white privilege is, in this case, is because you're white, people are able to weigh up your good and your bad, and your good will weigh more than your bad at the end of the day. Here's an example. Winston Churchill, no matter what he did to the African people, no matter what he did to the Indian people, we have the likes of Piers Morgan, who will still argue on the morning show with an amazing revolutionary from the UK. I'm going to put his name on the screen because I can't remember right now. He's a fantastic revolutionary. And giving facts about what he did to human beings and what he said about human beings. I might even play the clip here for you to see, so I'll play it there.
Why? I mean, the historical record here is clear. Even Boris Johnson admits that he was a racist. He was someone who believed that the white race was superior, that natives didn't have any right to their lands in the Americas, that Indians were a ghastly people, and just was a general imperialist racist.
Is there any way that we can say, because those were the views of their time, and the fact that he actually achieved something which saved, defended, protected our nation, means that we can separate those things out.
That's
from each
the
other.
Jimmy Savile defence, isn't it? It was just a bit different back in the day. Well, actually,
So likening Sir Winston Churchill to Jimmy Savile.
Well, let's make a better comparison. At the time, Leo Amory, the Secretary of India, not anti-racist, actually said that Churchill's views were so extreme on India, he couldn't separate them from Hitler's. And the truth is, Hitler was a great military leader, a product of his time, and if they'd won the war, we'd be having a discussion now.
But
saying,
luckily,
was Hitler a racist?
we can separate Sir Winston Churchill from Hitler because they went up against each other in the war.
Because
and
one
Sir
won
Winston Churchill
and one lost. The fact of the matter is that Churchill's views were so repugnant, and they actually led to 3 million people starving to death in Bengal because he was more interested in stockpiling rations for the war than saving starving Indians because he didn't believe they were really
people. Does it not
people.
matter to you one scintilla that Sir Winston Churchill almost single-handedly rallied this country into winning World War II against the Nazis and Adolf Hitler?
Well, that's also not true, and misses
That
the
is
point.
completely true.
People in India...
Which
people
part of
in
that statement is not true?
One man did not win the war. People in India, people in the Caribbean, people in Africa also contributed to the war.
Regardless of these things and what he's done, his good can still outweigh his bad. Often us as black people understand that. Our good, no matter how good, can never outweigh the bad as much as it can for a white person. And today, I was meditating, talking to God, about the concept and rehearsing my definition of white privilege. And I'm going to let you into my life now. You know how they said, I'm always talking to God? People say that. I'm always talking to God. Like a best friend. I'm like, because I've seen these guys, I'm not even going to give them any reference here. And they were doing a video, some black conservatives about white privilege, and they were kind of nullifying everything, you know, trying to please the white conservatives. And there's a horrible black conservative movement that I believe MLK would turn in his grave for. You know the likes of the Candace Owens and all that kind of stuff. But I was asking, what is white privilege? I know what white privilege is, but how do I define white privilege? You know, is it systematic? What is white privilege? And I wanted to get into systems in my mind and my thoughts, but I'm very much a spiritual kind of guy. I think you'll get that from my page. So I'll say something more times that I feel in my spirit, that I've prayed about, that I understand before anything. So I'm asking, how do I describe? I know what it is, but how do I describe it? And then I go to the store and I bump in and I see like a black lady, and I saw her, and everyone you know, black people you know, it was one of those hair braiding that you know your mom does when she's at home. We all know them. Those braids, she just kind of just to kind of fold them up. You know what I mean? Just to put the hair away, fold it up kind of thing. And I felt the Holy Spirit tell me, that's white privilege. This life, and I'm going to put a picture on the screen of two pictures of Afro hair. I've got one picture there, and I'm going to put another picture here, and then I'll put 3 pictures. Then I'll put another picture here. These are some of our, you guys will recognize, these are some of our trademark hairstyles. What white privilege is that we've lived in black people have been in this society for long enough that they should understand us and know us as a people by now. But yet, if those women with those hairstyles walked into a room, and if a woman with this hairstyle, got Kylie Jenner on the screen right now, before a word is uttered, that's it, you get it. A level of intelligence is already made. A level of worth, judgment is already made. That is white privilege. That is white privilege. We talk about Lucy Letby, who had a chance to kill so many babies before she was finally caught. A black woman was going to be reprimanded on the first child. Ain't no way. Apparently, she was even called in at one point, and there was an Asian man who was trying to accuse her, saying that it doesn't look right what Lucy Leppy is doing. Lucy Leppy did the white woman tears, managed to go and kill more babies. They said, leave her out of it. You better drop this. They told the thing to drop it, leave it. Boom. That's white privilege. But I want to talk about this. I always talk about hair, weaves, because I feel like it's like the core of who we are. We all, as human beings, make a judgment off of what we see. So we see something, we make a judgment. And what white privilege is, if this guy, The Weeknd, now let's pretend he's not The Weeknd. Let's pretend he's Jonathan from Dublin, an immigrant. And he's walking in to go get a job in a PR company. Has a degree, has everything. And then another man walks in, and he looks like this, Roy Keane. Before anything is said, we've already made a judgment on the level of intelligence. Subconsciously. Now we can go back to Vivek, and we can think about, maybe we have an idea why certain people got cold feet during the polls and said, you know what, despite him working his butt off, and there's them seeing that, and I can be sure that a lot of people who voted Trump in those polls are in doubt. I know Trump has some hardcore fans, but I think he has some people who are doubting in the background, unsure. But you know what? I identify with Trump. And of course, his charismatic traits that put the icing on top. But it's the point and the matter of the fact that his wrongs should, for a black person would, we talk about Claudine Gay, outweigh the bad. That is what white privilege is. And we can go further down this train. But I was studying, I was just focusing, and I'm just going to touch on this a little bit more. Let's look at Boris Johnson. I'm going to have a clip here I'm going to play. I want you to see what quotes he made before the people of Britain voted this man into power. Very much like a Trump situation. But you'll even see in this clip, the year after he made reckless statements like this, he was given a high position.
2002, writing in The Spectator, Johnson defends British colonialism in Africa, saying, "The problem is not that we were once in charge, but that we are not in charge anymore." Left to their own devices, the natives would rely on nothing but the instant carbohydrate gratification of the plantain. Meanwhile, in The Telegraph, he describes black Africans as, quote, flag-waving pickaninnies with watermelon smiles. 2003, Johnson is made vice chair of the Conservative Party and shadow arts minister.
There we are, white privilege. So, like I said, I've got so much points here. We on one hand, we have the destruction of the image. Look at the way he spoke about black people. Well, why doesn't it matter? Because what do black people matter anyway? And now we have finally reached a time in this world, in this history, where black people want to fight. For all those years, we finally have some parents who are sitting their kids down in the later times of their life and saying, you know what? I'm still haunted from the earlier days in my life. And you go out there and you make life more balanced. To have this lesser version or more covert version, I'm not impressed. Thank God for those parents. And shame on those parents who are thinking, well, we're not being spat on anymore. But we still live in it. This was 2002. And the man went into power 2023. And you guys tell us that there's no such thing as white privilege. Now, let's go further down this concept of destroying the perception and the image. Because I gave you hairstyles, I gave you Roy Keane, I gave you The Weeknd, I gave you African hairstyles, I gave you Akali John, I gave you white girl, black girl, and I told you the perception. We often forget, just because what I'm about to play for you now, just because these things are not happening as much anymore, we like to give people a lot more credit than they deserve. We like to behave as though the people who used to show images like this within Europe, what I'm going to show you is something that's happening in Egypt apparently at this moment. But this stuff used to happen in the Western civilization. And we like to give people credit as if they felt guilt and shame and stopped this behavior. We have to give credit to our forefathers who fought against imagery such as this. Up until recent years, 2019, 2016, every time there are people who are clued in who say, you know what, that on that show looks fishy, it needs to go. Just today, I saw an American TikTok of a girl said that they were trying to sell a new pancake mix, and they were branding a new pancake mix back when slavery was there. And they called the pancake mix Jemima. I was going to be called Jemima if I was going to be a girl. And on the box, when they branded it to sell it, it said slave in a box. Basically, you may not have a slave that cooks you these pancakes as well, but we have made this pancake mix ready to go just as good as slave in a box. Just as good as you've got your own slave. I'm tying in what I talked about in my last episode regarding interracial relationships and imagery and why imagery is important and how they destroyed us with imagery and pursued that, and how they persisted in giving images about Africa being poor, yet we are the richest land. I just found out again today that I love learning. The oil that Nigeria has, oh, check this out. Oil is shipped out and it's sold back to us for double the price. Because apparently we don't have, when they mine it, they've obstructed us from getting the machinery that cleanses and purifies the oil for us to sell it ourselves. I continuously bang on about. So when people know that they're making this much off Nigeria, a wise thief makes everyone believe these Nigerians. That's what you hear people say, these Nigerians. And little do you know, Negro, you've bought into that. Not understanding you are a creditor to the whole world. Let me play this for you. Talking about imagery.
It is crude.
أيوة بس هو مش بيعجبه جمالي. هو بيحب النيجرز.
It is offensive.
هو أنا جاي البيت ده المزاجي ولا عشان أحرر فيه عبيد؟
And it's ugly. In the Arab world, racist depictions of black people are rampant. And the use of blackface is rife. Black people are routinely cast into subservience, playing servants, prostitutes, or they're shown as straight-up objects of ridicule.
When we watch TV shows or movies, black people are always inferior. And blackface is an inferior, negative and racist concept, which should not belong in the Arab world. We almost never speak about this segment of Arab society, black people. Firstly, because they never get to speak in public spaces. The black person is a citizen in the Arab world, but an invisible citizen. Why? Because power made him invisible.
The Arab world is entirely self-righteous. We would never admit that we're racist. Lebanese would never admit they're racist. Libyans, they would never admit they're racist. Even people from Sudan they would never admit that the race is like against their own black people.
Blackface is a practice rooted in the 19th century United States. White actors blacken their skin to mimic enslaved Africans on southern plantations, creating a stereotype of lazy, ignorant black people. How blackface entered the Arab mainstream is not certain. British colonizers are thought to have brought it to Egypt in the 1880s. Be it in the Middle East or in the West, blackface is rooted in slavery and racism, reinforcing a toxic notion that blackness is at best a joke. From Western politicians to media personalities,
I mean, truly, political correctness has gone amok.
To even a jumper designed by Gucci, blackface scandals are all over the news. Underpinning this racist form of comedy is a deep social amnesia, a denial of a history of slavery. Between the 7th and 19th century, Arab traders captured millions of African slaves and shipped them out of the continent. Slavery was not formally abolished in the Arab Gulf countries until 1970. Many contend a modern form of slavery still exists there today.
Now, as you can see here, the pursuit to destroy the image of African people has continued. Now, there's blackface, there's were movies in more recent times where the black guy was always the black guy. Guys, that's why even when the Irish had never, the current Irish generation in 1996 from 1995 had never seen a black person, what they had heard about a black person was because of imagery. I'm gonna give you one last piece of evidence to prove to you my point today. Michelle Obama says she gave up braids in the White House as Americans were still getting adjusted to a black president. I believe you, Michelle. I believe you, Michelle. Why do I believe you? Because I'm gonna put another picture up here, and our women have resorted to all looking like this. Why? Because they feel the brutality. They feel the misjudgment if they were to say walking with a hairstyle like this. They feel that. So now they've been programmed. Now our women cannot leave that. When I say getting to the bottom of who we were, and getting to a place of comfort, black people, where we sit in a place of dominance. Imagine we made these hairstyles acceptable in day-to-day life. Imagine that for me is one, and like I said, don't focus on the hairstyle. Focus on what that would represent. What would that society represent if a black woman, the same way a messy bun for a white woman, a black woman in any form of this hair, we can find comfort in society. This woman who I'm showing on the screen now is a black revolutionary. She does not count. She is programming her mind to spearhead this mentality. I mean, your everyday black woman. Then we'll know we're succeeding. And white people underestimate how much they stole from us. You broke our soul. You didn't just steal our resources, you broke our soul. Where being ourselves is not even a thing anymore. This is African people. This is African. This is our hair texture. This is us. Why are we now trying to look like the Kylie Jenner photograph when that is not us? I don't blame my black women. I understand that is the detriment of colonial. That is the damage a colonized mind can do. And every day you want to act like we've not got over it. There's no such thing as white privilege. Why I'm bringing Vivek in here today? Because I wanted to say Trump, even being in this place where Vivek has to step down, is what you call white privilege. I'm going to do more episodes. I'm running out of time. I'm going to do more episodes where I dive into white privilege. But I like to give something as simple as a hairstyle. That's what I spoke about today. Because what you wear says a lot about how you feel about yourself. What you wear says a lot about your identity. It says a lot about your comfort in your identity. I say this over and over. Can you imagine if Megyn Kelly, the podcaster from America, woke up tomorrow and was wearing an Afro wig on every single one of her podcasts? Because she didn't believe, because Africa, let's say, colonized them, and they no longer believed that they were the beauty standard. And they were forced to believe that Afrocentric beauty was the main standard. Don't you guys in the Conservative Party dare. And black people, rather, don't you let them manipulate you that has not been damaged on the black community. There are simple things of society, simple things of day-to-day life that were stolen from us, like your identity. We are African people who feel ashamed of our hair texture. And year by year, we've got people coming out of that. If we're something as little as your hair texture and how you wear yourself, God only knows when we talk about systematic. And I'll get into that in a different video. But today, this is what I wanted to talk about. This world has got a lot of growing to do.